Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. Today we have a young kid, seems to be, who's a lawyer and an author. Hello, Deekhit.
Hi. Sorry, I've always looked younger than I am. Yes, I'm a
Yeah.
corporate lawyer. Yeah, happy to be here.
So Deekhit Bhattacharya has written a book with the great Dr. Gautam Desiraju, which has been pretty popular, and I have seen discussions of the book in many platforms on many podcasts. And finally, we have Deekhit to discuss the book with us as well. So, firstly, Deekhit, how did you become a lawyer and then get interested in writing about this topic, which is not really on law?
See, I even my entry into law was actually rather circuitous. I did my economics honors first, and then I
I
took a
see.
postgraduate degree in law. And while I was doing
I
economics,
see.
I was very interested in institutional economics and a good deal of libertarianism and trade
I
optimization.
see. Okay.
So I think afterwards, when I entered the realm of law, actually I did this short course from the University of Chicago,
Okay.
which was about essentially, the economics and the law of the tech giants we're seeing today. And from there,
I
I
see.
got into policy making and so on.
Okay.
So when I picked this subject with Gautam sir, this wasn't a big deal. It was, of course, around
Hmm.
two odd years back,
Hmm.
but I could see many of the fissures that we have and the fact that how badly economically and politically the system is designed currently, that
Yeah.
started entering into discussions, and we actually ended up tracing an entirely different economic and political history of why our states look the way they are, and you won't find
Hmm.
it anywhere else, which also shows how poor the scholarship really is when it comes to the political economy in India. It's either just Marxist drivel.
Yeah.
Sorry to use that phrase, or it is very pedantic.
Hmm.
So we try to take an honest and as historically appropriate and political economy view, and then we try to see how can we optimize the system.
Hmm. So, why delimitation though? Why
Why
did
did
this subject interest you in the first place?
so primarily if you take a look at why our states are the way they are,
Hmm.
the unfortunate thing is in the 1956 States Reorganization Committee, which basically has set the stance for what our current states look like.
Hmm.
Back then, what their complaint was, we still have the same complaint, which means that not much of fundamental difference has been made in all these years. That
Hmm.
our states are fundamentally randomly drawn,
Hmm.
poorly optimized with respect to economy, and
Hmm.
are probably not good enough markers of identity.
Hmm.
So I think when it comes to India itself, the discussion really begins with what should a state be? What do you mean by a state?
Yeah.
From a strictly legalistic point of view, a state is basically, there's this political unit XYZ. No, but in a
Hmm.
democracy like India, there has to be some coherence between the Rajya and the Rashtra, the nation and the
Hmm.
state, right?
Yeah.
The Rajya essentially should be able to reflect and subserve the Rashtra. That
Yeah.
is not happening right now, whether you take it socially, politically, or economically. So then I went about asking, why is it so bad?
Hmm.
And it turns out that delimitation and states
Hmm.
reorganization is basically the same. It's basically the same coin with two sides. You cannot
Hmm.
have one without the other.
Hmm. Right. And then, when did you start writing this book, and how did you research for the book?
The book actually began around 2 odd years ago. It was
Okay.
written basically. The idea came struck at random while we were discussing some
I
other
see.
things. I was working with Professor Desiraju on a particular project concerning India's supply chains.
Okay.
And increasingly, we started hitting these walls of state regulations and so on. And when we had a look at it around 2 odd years ago, we said that, boss, we're only putting band-aids where the wounds are too deep. You need
Hmm.
a thorough reorganization, and most alarmingly, we need to prevent while removing the economic bottlenecks, which every state is grasped by to varying degrees. There's a
Yeah.
major political threat here. The
Hmm.
political unity of the country depends a lot on how we organize these states and what kind of relations these states enjoy vis-a-vis first themselves, but also vis-a-vis the union.
Hmm.
Today, let's say Mizoram's chief minister is visiting New Delhi, the prime minister's
Hmm.
office, and at the same time UP, Maharashtra, or Tamil Nadu's chief minister is visiting. Will he get the same
Hmm.
kind of weightage?
Hmm.
Right?
Probably
That
not.
Definitely not.
Hmm.
So when it comes to, and similarly, if say two states are at loggerheads with each other every summer or so, some states in our country have seasons where they start fighting and then forget about it. So Karnataka and
Yeah.
Tamil Nadu have a nice season to fight. Every year you can probably, time it very well and get your popcorn in advance. At the
Yeah.
same time, Bengal and Odisha.
Yeah.
So all of these states, now ultimately it is disturbing the political unity of the country somewhere. You can't have cooperative and competitive federalism when the basis for that competition is being undermined by identitarian concerns.
Right. Do you do you then support linguistic boundaries for states? What should be the basis on which states are created?
So that's actually the heart of the book.
Hmm.
Before I answer this question, let me have a look at. So in 1955, when the draft of the States Reorganization Commission report was out to certain select members,
Hmm.
Dr. Ambedkar wrote a scathing criticism of it in a
Okay.
pamphlet. Very
Okay.
interestingly, that pamphlet has almost been scrubbed online. It is not available online. I
Oh,
found it in the National Archives, and it is fairly evident to me that the people who existed at that time, the powers that we did their best to suppress.
I see.
And in that pamphlet, I will only point towards three indications to display how right Dr. Ambedkar was.
Hmm.
First was he said that the way you're dividing the states, you will have a north-south divide.
Hmm.
1955, I'm talking.
Yeah.
He said that there'll be a north-south divide because you are unifying the north and balkanizing the south. Essentially, the sizes of the
I
states vis-a-vis the
see.
population is too different. Then
Hmm.
he said, do not merge what is today North and South Karnataka.
I see.
He said the moment you do that, the entire state will be held hostage to Lingayats hating Vokkaligas and vice versa. And
I
thus, the
see.
entire progress of the state will go down the drain.
Okay.
The third point he made was I have no problem with one state, one language, but I do have a problem with one language, one state.
Hmm.
Essentially, what he was saying is you cannot boil down the complex identities of people here just based on a set of common dialects they may speak because their economic, social, political interests might be completely elsewhere,
Right.
right? And unfortunately, and even in the States Reorganization Commission report, if you see, there was a strong note of dissent by Dr.
Hmm.
Parekar.
Hmm.
That note of dissent also said that this system which we are proposing here in this report is not fully workable. And even in that report, for example, so even when they took language to be the prime determinant, they had
Hmm.
asked for Vidarbha to be separated from Maharashtra. It was
I
never
see.
the recommendations were never taken up. The recommendations were taken up by the government of the time to suit their electoral interests.
Okay.
What was happening at that time was, especially in parts of North India,
Hmm.
many of the old universities, the old state universities, Patna, Banaras, Allahabad, so on
Hmm.
and so forth, they were dominated by certain intellectual circles which were closer to people like Dr. Rajendra Prasad instead of Nehru.
Okay.
And there was this initial wave which was, taking a different line from the Congress of that time.
Okay.
So non-Congress politics was beginning to emerge at that time amongst these
Right.
universities. The
Right.
challenge was that had, let's say, UP been divided. So the commission report was very silent on UP.
Hmm.
And the reason why was because the UP Congress leaders were making a beeline for all of the commission members and were basically saying that please do not write that you want to divide UP. And the reason was UP makes no sense whether you look at it language wise, identity wise, culture wise, economy wise.
Hmm.
It's like four or five different states strung together.
Hmm.
And basically, the reason for why so much reticence was organized at that point was that these universities were becoming incipient centers. Now, what will happen if one region in UP
Hmm.
has the kind of political acumen and has the kind of political elite to
Hmm.
form a non Congress government?
Hmm.
But if you have a very large state, where if you're winning three regions out of five, the other two regions have no say, you
Yeah.
can delay the non Congress phase.
Hmm.
And hence, we ended up with this system which we've got.
Right.
So when it comes, so now to come back to the question, how should our states be organized? What we found was, look, at the beginning of the entire mess, which was 55, 56, what was our number one priority? Maintaining the unity and integrity of a new nation.
Yeah.
At that point, even if you had to do a little bit of bad economics just to make sure that the nation survives, politically survives, I think that was a good enough task to do. Now, what is the focus? Now, the focus is India equitably as well as fast as possible needs to provide a good standard of living to all of its citizens. We need to grow fast. Economically, we need to grow fast.
Yeah.
That was not too much of a concern back then. Because, of course, political unity was such an overriding factor.
Yeah.
So now we tried to figure out across countries and including in India, what has been the best determinant of state size. And at the same time, I would like to say we have gone extensively into, some of the Dharma Shastras, Artha Shastra, this and that, but I am not a dogmatic person. As a person with an economic background, whatever works is best for me. My determinant for what works is proof should be in the pudding. So even when we go back, we find out that the units of the states, the sizes were generally kept small. As a matter of fact, in the Mughal era, the size of a state was very, very small.
Right.
And only later they started unifying these places, but only militarily or politically and economically these places were still governed rather separately.
Okay.
And the best determinant for state size, generally speaking, in this part of the world is the distance of the population from the capital.
Yeah.
Because usually what happens is wherever the elite sits, that becomes their little well. They become frogs in a pool.
Proximity
Right?
to power, of course.
So they all start dumping whatever needs to be, whatever resources are there, and becomes an extractive thing. For example, Karnataka. It's a wonderful state, great people, this and that. You take out just Bangalore urban district out from Karnataka, the GDP falls by a third.
Yeah. And for some reason, they don't realize it themselves.
No, they're very angry that, other states are taking away their tax dollars. But what happens if tomorrow Bangalore starts saying, I don't want to give my tax dollars?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And Bangladesh situation to jano hai.
Yeah.
Kolkata chedegi jua. Matha hi ashe na. So the point of the matter is that this population distance becomes important because the further you are, your interest and your relevance to the center goes down exponentially.
Yeah.
And hence what we found out is generally this 2 crore size. Roughly, if a state is of 2 crore size, that becomes important. There's one more very important reason, one more very important way of doing it is except for hill states where diversity is very high. Except for hill states where diversity is very high. If states are roughly equally sized in terms of population, they have equal bargaining power with respect to the center.
Right. Exactly.
Today, lot of the disappointment which the South has, lot of the resentment which the South has, actually doesn't have to do a lot with money or birth rates or this and that. It's because they understand that they have lower bargaining power with respect to the center compared to UP or Bihar. What if we can somewhat equalize it while, of course, retaining whatever needs to be done of identity? It's not a perfect thing. I have probably sent you this graph.
Yeah.
This would be a good place to show it for me to explain what I'm trying to say.
Okay, I'll get it. In the meanwhile, can you tell me, is there any other way to do states other than linguistics? Because if it has to be on some identity, why not linguistics? Because it can't be done without the basis of some sort of non-economic identity, right? Otherwise, we go into that non-feasible realm again.
The whole point of why I have the states is I am trying to optimize for both identity as well as economics.
Okay.
So while language is one determinant, definitely I'm taking language as one of the determinants in my matrix which we've used to calculate how to go about these states. It is not the only determinant. I'm also looking at a lot of things such as, okay, what kind of food do they eat? Do they have a shared history? Do they have a shared economic past and hence a shared economic future? How do these people, essentially I'm trying to find out how do these people look at themselves? And I'll give you a very good example of why language is such a poor proxy for identity. But let me first just explain this graph.
Yeah, go
This
ahead.
light gray thing which you see is a distribution of the states we have right now.
Okay.
That very last gray dot on the right is Uttar Pradesh,
Okay.
extreme outlier, right?
Okay.
And the very first which we have here is Sikkim, another extreme
Okay.
outlier. What you
Okay.
can see is we can broadly group these states in three different baskets here. First is the very small states, which are these northeastern and some of the northern states, which begin at the which begin near zero for the light gray graph. Then
Okay.
we have very vaguely distributed states, which are the rest of the country, and then we have Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Tamil Nadu at the last. What the problem with this is, that fellow who's at the extreme right of the graph, right? He's some 1,300 times bigger than the fellow who's at the beginning of the graph.
Yeah.
And to artificially equate that, I am giving each citizen in UP a lesser vote. Right?
Yeah.
A person in Rajasthan, right? Compared to a person in one of the South Indian states. A South Indian state has 1.3 to 1.7 times the vote. Why? What is wrong with being born Rajasthani? Is he less of a citizen?
Right.
Simply because of where you're born, or what kind of ethnicity you're born into, or what kind of residence you're born into, your worth in the eyes of the state, your vote is basically your worth in the eyes of the state. That is going up or down.
Yeah.
At the same time, these states are so vastly dispersed that one state can override the other simply because it has more Lok Sabha seats.
Yeah.
Which is why I said, if I optimize for identity, optimize for economics, I'm keeping exceptions for the hill states. I'm also keeping an exception for places like Mithila. You know, Mithila is around 6 crores in my scheme, which is roughly 3 times that of the average state. But it makes no sense for me to divide it because geographically it is the same, culturally it is the same, linguistically it is the same, economically it is the same.
Okay.
Now, just for the sake of a nice, neat and clean graph, I'm not going to divide the state just like that. Similarly, I've got a state called Indrakil, which is Sikkim and the Nepali-speaking districts of today's West Bengal. I've gone down to the taluka level to craft it. Because I'm sure many people who are Bengali romancists will hate this, but the fact is, until the British came, those areas were not a part of Bengal.
Yeah.
Right? During the Sikkimese-British wars, when the Sikkimese had invaded Cooch Behar, all of these territories were ceded, and then for just bad luck, they got patched together with West Bengal.
Even Kalimpong used to be with Bhutan. British just took it and never returned to them. It remained with Bengal.
Kalimpong, Darjeeling, a few of the districts here and there, and you take a look at the map, it makes no sense, and which is why we have so much political issue there.
Yeah.
Bengal has wasted an entire decade trying to unsuccessfully solve the Gorkhaland issue.
Yeah.
Neither the Gorkhalis are happy nor are we.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, what I have done is, language is a factor. But it cannot be the only proxy for identity. I need to understand how these people think about themselves. So their socioeconomic standing, what regions are they interested in when it comes to their economic future? For example, the part of Kerala where the Palghat gap occurs.
Yeah.
Right? Because that gap occurs in the Western Ghats. Culturally, economically, politically, socially, they've had a very different history, and they have a very different future from the south of Kerala, which is so isolated that foreign trade is almost their exclusive preserve.
Right.
At least in the past was. Now, why? Simply because these people, they've had a 1300, 1400 year history of being separate people and being governed separately. You're clubbing them together because they happen to speak similar dialects.
Right.
Actually, Bongoর জন্য আমি case study একটা করেছি বইতে. I've done a case study for Bengal as well.
Okay.
Not even many Bengalis know that the idea of Banga and Gauda were not the same regions.
Yeah.
Even today, the Prajapati of Puri, he has he has Vangeshwar and Gaudeshwar as two separate titles. Even the Palas, the famous Palas of Bengal, they also treated it as separate entities, and even today Whether
Yeah.
it's our food, whether it's our culture, whether it's our dialect, whether it's our economic interest, it's different.
Hmm.
And one more, and you can see these things. And I'm not saying that we need to hearken to some 5,000-year-old past and replicate it.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Let's take Tamil Nadu because they're the most virulent about these language things. So historically, Tamil Nadu has been three different entities, three different
Hmm.
kingdoms, Chola, Chera, Pandya kingdoms. When the famous, during the height of the Chola Empire, you had Raja Rajendra Chola, taking Dharma to Southeast Asia. Even during that time, symbolically, the Chola king used to wear three different crowns.
I see.
Right. So in the West, you have this concept of a personal union where there are two different
Hmm.
kingdoms, but the same king is sitting. However, technically, he's different for these two different entities.
Hmm.
Bharat generally used to follow a similar kind of system.
Okay.
So you had three different crowns. Now, if I take modern day map of Tamil Nadu,
Hmm.
draw these three different places separately.
Hmm.
Let me superimpose it with the areas BMK wins and AIDMK wins. It corresponds perfectly.
I see.
Let me superimpose it with the economic networks with the rest of the country. They're still distinct. Let me superimpose it with a map of the dialect spoken. It is different.
I
Let me
see.
superimpose it with a concept such as how do they cook their sambar? It is still different.
I see.
And this same thing is repeating across the country, whether it's Bundelkhand, whether it's Bengal, whether it's Tamil Nadu, whether it's Maharashtra, whether it's UP, whether it's Jammu. Same
Okay.
story everywhere. I'm not saying I
Hmm.
want to make new divisions. I'm saying let me give
Yeah.
recognition to the divisions which already exist and optimize economically.
Hmm. Now, how do you plan to sell this idea?
That's the
How
whole
should it
point.
be done?
Now the thing is, we've got this alarming situation where the delimitation issue is coming up.
Hmm.
Correct. Every state will want to have maximum bargaining power with respect to the center, so they will all
Hmm.
ask for different things. Uttar Pradesh
Hmm.
will say that we follow the population criteria strictly,
Hmm.
give me seats, and naturally, states which will relatively lose out. So, Bengal is still going to have an increase in seats, but in relative terms, in percentage terms, the representation in the parliament may go down.
Hmm.
Maharashtra will remain stagnant. Tamil
Hmm.
Nadu will go down. The reason why this up and down is happening is because of that grey line. You never
Yeah.
designed your states properly,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is why they're all fighting with each other.
Yeah.
And here is the connection between delimitation and states reorganization. You
Hmm.
cannot see at the very first thing. Each state needs to have equal heft and each vote has to have an equal weight. I
Yeah.
cannot discriminate. See, today the South is very angry about XYZ.
Hmm.
How on earth will you handle a North which feels discriminated against in the future?
Yeah.
Politically, it is impossible to do it in the way we are currently doing it.
Hmm.
Which is why, if you want to do a fair delimitation where each citizen gets an equal say as well as state they live in has roughly the
Hmm.
equal bargaining power with center so that they can get the schemes they need, they can get the investment they need.
Hmm.
When you're delimiting your constituencies, you need to have 75 equally sized states roughly. And I've given a map of the same. You want to discuss it? It's a pretty interesting map.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. You sent me the map, right?
Yeah.
Wait. I'll put that up. We have some important questions from the live chat already.
Go
Do
ahead.
you support the four-part division of UP that Mayawati had recommended?
No, a further division of UP. I support a further division of UP. You'll see it in the map.
Hmm.
Because again, that four-part division is part of the same scheme, which is faulty.
Right.
If you're planting an apple tree, don't expect oranges to fall out.
Yeah. Wait. The other question is, okay, this is for me. Such an interesting topic. Where can I get the book? It's on Amazon. Rishabh, I've put the link on the description in the description box. Okay. Wait. Where is this?
Major.
So this is the map you are suggesting, right?
Correct.
Hmm.
You can see much of the northeast has been left undisturbed simply because
Yeah.
even though they might be slightly lower population, I will not have non-homogeneous people strung together like today so that they keep fighting.
Hmm. How much is the heterogeneity problem going to be addressed? Because since political discourse discord often survives because of just funding and bad people and stuff, people who just don't want what's best for the state or the country. Aren't new fissures going to be found out, or some other schemes or basis for division is going to be found out and then created problems in these hypothetical states of Mallabhum and Gauda in the future anyway? Kamtapur, Indrakil.
So there's 2 points here. Here we need to
Hmm.
understand how clientelistic politics affects the economy of a state.
Hmm.
Clientelistic politics is just a fancy way of saying that let's say if me, Neeraj, and a few of let's take Bengal. So
Yeah.
you've got the Brahman Kshatriyo, Brahman
Brahman Boiddo Kayesto.
Kayastho fellows, and we know what they've
Hmm.
done to the state thanks to Neeraj's
Yeah.
incessant expositions on the same subject.
Hmm.
Now the thing is, the moment this elite comes into power,
Yeah.
they are going to redirect the entire state's resources disproportionately to their own constituencies.
Hmm.
In Bengal's case, it is themselves as well as certain political vote banks they may have inculcated.
Hmm.
Illegals, this and that.
Yeah.
Now, generally, Bengal is a border state, so it's a little different for us. Generally, what happens is this devolves into caste politics. So when in UP the Samajwadi Party wins, suddenly every constable getting an appointment is a Yadav. Every CMO being appointed is a Yadav. Every fellow who's getting an appointment becomes a Yadav. Likewise,
Yes.
Tamil Nadu, you can see in any part of the country, you can see no part is impervious to this kind of clientelism. But more perniciously, what happens is schemes, investment. Why is it that certain parts of the state have so much investment being pumped into them? It's a result of this
Yeah.
clientelistic politics, which rests on fighting, making one community fight with the other.
Okay.
What I've noticed it is not just heterogeneity which causes clientelistic politics. It is the
Okay.
size of the minorities which cause.
Right.
If the
Right.
minority is sufficiently small, clientelistic politics becomes unviable.
Hmm.
And hence, ironically, it's a very counterintuitive thing.
Yeah.
If the size of the minority is kept sufficiently small,
Hmm.
the minority itself becomes a beneficiary of schemes X, Y, and Z, and we've seen it play out in multiple states.
Hmm.
But if the size of the minority crosses the 20% mark, 25% mark,
Hmm.
gone case.
Yeah. And if they're sufficiently low in numbers, they feel sort of a need to assimilate anyway, assimilate or
Correct.
integrate in the society.
Correct. So let's say Mallabhum, Gauda, Kamtapur, these things. Mallabhum in general, if you notice, its destiny in general has been with central India's economics, which is predicated on minerals, logistics, forestry, agriculture, so
Right.
on and so forth.
Yeah.
Gauda historically has been an entrepot
Hmm.
between Tibet, Myanmar, the Northeast, the rest of India, and India's naval frontiers.
Hmm.
So sorry, there is no Anga here because we don't have Anga left. It's basically
Yeah.
Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Anything between the Hooghly and Podda was Anga, it's gone.
Hmm.
Kamtapur, again, because of Ekhane, you can see Pooch Bihar is there, but parts of erstwhile Bihar have also been undertaken here based on both cultural and economic reasons.
Hmm.
Parts of erstwhile Bihar have been merged with Kamtapur. So here you can see there has to be a consonance between the economics and the identity, which I'm trying to do, and to avoid a situation where I have the kind of heterogeneity which leads to clientelistic politics and hence an extractive economics.
Hmm.
In Mumbai, I would like to point out a very important fact. Ruchir Sharma, the economist, he's one of my favorite fellows.
Okay.
In Rise and Fall of Nations, he pointed out towards a very alarming problem in India, which is the lack of second cities.
I see.
Second cities,
Exactly.
mane, Second city is mane. What happens is, let me take any state. Let me take the size of its capital with respect to its population. Because generally, 80% of the time, the capital is the biggest city. There are exceptions, of course. Gujarat, they've turned a suburb into a, they've turned Gandhinagar into. Let's not go into that. Now you've got this massive city. What is the size of the city next to that? Generally, in countries, what happens is any country, let's take for example Thailand, whenever
Okay.
the second city is not at least half the size of the main city, you will have political problems because essentially the politics becomes concentrative and clientelistic. जो कर्नाटका है case आज.
Yeah.
Do you know where does most of the water from Bengaluru comes from? It's extracted 150 kilometers away, causing drought-like conditions.
I see.
So this second city problem is intimately related to the fact that your states are too big.
Right.
And what has happened is China has built more than 100 second cities since the turn of the century. India has built 0.
I see. I see.
Technically, we have one, but that was because one of the district boundaries got rearranged in Kerala, which is irrelevant.
Yeah. Now, even in terms of on the in the matter of decentralization, this seems to be a great idea to me of the face on the face of it, because I don't think about this topic at all ever. So this is the first time I'm hearing these arguments.
See,
Do you then support?
one more thing? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
As say someone who follows the Austrian school of economics and so on and so forth, the basis for prosperity is specialization in trade.
Yeah.
If Nirajan is great at making music, he should do more of it. And
Yeah.
based on the surplus which he accumulates from doing good music, he can trade it with other services and products which he needs.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
What happens in a big state where there are multiple economic fishes? They become competitive. Let's say in Bengal's case, do I give money to mining? Do I give money to trade? Do I give money to agriculture? Or do I give money to madrasa imams?
Yeah.
So now, in this situation, what happens is whoever is my constituency,
Yeah.
I will give money to them.
Yeah.
What happens to the economies of the other people who are not my constituencies or I don't find relevant? The overall economic curve, the overall economic potential of the state can never be reached. Then it becomes suppressed.
Exactly.
Because essentially, if you have 4 cylinders firing in an engine, here only one will. At the max 2.
Yeah.
When you have smaller states, you're giving them a chance to specialize. They don't have that many competing economic concerns.
Yeah.
So the overall potential of not just the state, but the country goes up, which is what, see, in Germany, you had the Mittelstand revolution. You have smaller units, and you don't actually have any big metropolis in Germany. Because
I
of the
see.
union history, they got unified at such a later date that all of these smaller kingdoms continue to retain their economic specializations.
Oh.
Which is why today when we say equitable growth, it is impossible to do it if you don't politically or order your country this way. Vietnam, which I believe is actually one of our good economic competitors,
Yeah.
they have last month announced a plan to redraw their provinces to economically optimize them.
I see.
They've gotten to this idea long before we have.
Yeah.
Please.
Now, Sanjeev Sanyal used to say up until 3-4 years back that earlier, at some point in our history, we used to complain that we can't develop or have clean cities and prosperity and stuff because we are a poor country. Now, when we started getting richer, we still were not able to catch up to other countries. But on the other hand, Vietnam, still being pretty much a poor country, it has great cities, at least has one great city. And I have friends who go for their honeymoon to Vietnam, even though they are the top 1-2% earners in the country. And for them, Vietnam is a great destination. How is not India a great destination for such people? So what are they doing right? And is it just so what Sandeep Sanyal attributed that was to just great intentions. Can great intentions help in India's case because of our democracy, or will it be can intentions not help really?
I'll be very frank. The whole point of an institutional architecture is to preserve the progress of a country regardless of the person's intention who sits in that institution.
Yeah. I don't think Indians are on board with this idea of yours. we think the exact opposite way.
No,
That a great,
because we've been trained that way. The
yeah,
moment we got independent, you had such a looming figure like Nehru. Then you had such a
yeah,
looming figure like Indira. Everything got personalized, and we're continuing that
yeah,
mold.
yeah.
But anyone who studied anything about history and economics knows that the whole point of an institution is to make sure that the progress is not hindered unnecessarily when a bad apple comes, and to enable
Yeah.
the good apple to do what needs to be done.
That is what people don't get about even ancient Indian history, because so much is discussed about our kings and stuff. People think it was a completely king dependent society. It was largely an autopilot society. Kings
Boss,
were, we only learn about kings because that's what we find from our Puranas and
boss,
stuff, which were funded by the kings.
even in the Puran, even in the Shastras and all. Let's take a look at the Dharma Shastras where the law was
Yeah.
codified. As a
Yeah.
lawyer, that's the
Yeah.
best I can do. So,
Yeah.
where the law was codified, you take a look at. There's this beautiful book. It's out of print, unfortunately.
Okay.
R.C. Majumdar's book. It's called
I
Corporate
see.
Life in Ancient India.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Corporate life in ancient India, what is happening is each economic grouping in the country
Hmm.
is essentially autonomous with respect to its landholdings, trade, right to trade, and has a constitution of its own.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
king cannot go beyond that constitution.
Hmm.
The king can override certain things only if it is absolutely born out of exigency, and there are massive limitations on the king to impose restrictions on the functioning and the powers of these guilds.
Hmm.
Boss, we're stuck right now at political things. You're talking about incorporating guilds and autonomous running and international trade being routed through guilds where the king can, and the king actually has to pay a nominal obeisance to all of these guild lords when they come.
Hmm.
Can you see the importance of industry and the right to industry to today we're seeing self-regulatory organizations. You're drafting
Yeah.
schemes left, right, and
Yeah.
center.
Yeah.
They're not even a pay limitation of what has already been done. The
Right.
point of a king was the active involvement of a king was largely limited to foreign affairs and defense.
Yes.
The rest, he was simply primus inter pares to design an institutional architecture to enable the best to come out of his citizens. The king is
Hmm.
the father. It's his responsibility to enable his children to come to the best of their potential. And this is a
Hmm.
dharmic sutra. The king is a father.
Hmm.
We're nowhere
Now,
near.
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
So, when, to come back to uh, Sanjeev Sanyal's statement about
Yeah.
intentions,
Yeah.
with all due respect to him, this is not going to make us a superpower. इससे नहीं बनेंगे भाई विश्वगुरु.
Hmm.
What needs to be done is you need to evolve institutional architecture such as this, where you can enable people to. Today we are seeing one district, one product, one district, one product.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of when to come back to the exact question, which is why is Vietnam cleaner? Why are we not?
Hmm.
So I have my maternal side has links to Jammu and Kashmir.
Okay.
That state is quite close to my heart.
Okay.
Large parts of Jammu. As a matter of fact, I have never been to Kashmir because I never felt the need to, because Jammu itself is so pretty if you know the places.
I see.
You go a little beyond Ramban, you enter rural Riyasi and hilly Riyasi. It is prettier than Kashmir.
Okay.
But why is it that tourism was never developed there?
Hmm.
Valley-centric politics.
Hmm.
Jammu makes most of the revenue in the state.
I see.
Kashmir is no party. Then another great example. Do you know Ladakh has better quality apples than Kashmir?
Okay.
The apples are bigger and juicier
I
and
see.
have more sugar content.
I
The
see.
Kashmiri politicians firstly did not allow Ladakh to use air to export their apples,
Hmm.
and then prevented through archaic laws the
Hmm.
transport of Ladakhi apples beyond the state.
Hmm.
The same limitations were never imposed on Kashmiri apples. This is clientelistic politics playing out at its most ugly. This happens in each part of this country.
Yeah.
कहाँ से बनोगे वियतनाम जब आप ये करोगे?
Yeah.
It's not about intentions, it's about institutions.
Now we have one great question. We will take a lot of these live chat questions anyway. One is relevant right now. So a guest of ours is asking, a viewer of ours is asking that how do you want that second cities thing to happen, by central planning or somehow on their own, like SEZ and stuff?
People forget China actually didn't have a national level full industrial policy till the early 2000s.
Okay,
When we say China could achieve all what it could because of central planning, it's largely because of Chinese propaganda.
I see. So Chinese
And
propaganda
today,
is taking credit, giving the credit to central planning.
because see, right now you've got a central command which wants all the credit.
I see.
You've not had the kind of leaders which Deng Xiaoping and Jiang Zemin were, and probably Hu Jintao was the last of that type.
Okay.
The silent, non-flamboyant, non-credit taking type. You right now have, so they are also actually grasped by this personality politics complex which Chinese civilization tends to have over time. Historically, that's been their trend. And historically, whenever centralization occurs, the Ming Empire stops international trade and undergoes collapse. The Tang Empire undertakes disaster planning and goes collapse. Whenever they're overly centralizing, China is coming to a very bad time. So even when it comes to central planning per se, we say, for example, intellectual property. So much China's industrial research happened because of central planning. Wrong. They introduced a scheme at the central level to incentivize the creation of patents, this and that.
Exactly. This is what the Libertarian Party of India was also saying with the last time they came on, and I was surprised to hear that. An audience member is also agreeing with you here. China is more decentralized than quasi-socialist India.
So this. So when they introduced the scheme, the percentage of innovative patents went down sharply. I'm actually reminded by this apocryphal story from the Soviet Union. One day there was this factory which used to make chandeliers.
Okay.
Okay. The commissar came and the commissar said, this factory people aren't working hard enough. I want to optimize the chandeliers they produce.
Okay.
So he said that what I'm going to do every month, I will weigh the chandeliers the total number of chandeliers which you're making, and you have to maximize the weight. They started making chandeliers with materials that were so heavy that they couldn't string it up.
Okay.
The roof used to collapse.
I see.
Then he said, no, what I will do is you have to produce a maximum number of chandeliers. They started using lighter materials which were so light that the chandelier used to come apart when you used to string it up.
I see.
It's not central planning. When you have a division like this, all of these states are going to have capitals. All of these states have been designed in a way where the economic interests and the specialization is roughly the same for the entire state.
Okay.
Right? So when that capital comes up, this is what will lead to second cities coming up, because all of these regions are specializing. That capital is specializing in making sure that the entire state is working well. And you will start seeing an efflorescence of cities. And many of these cities and the capitals which are proposed, so there's a table actually in the book where the capitals are proposed. They've also been strategically chosen, and many times they're at places where either economic activity is already very high or the potential for them to coordinate the entire state is very high. So you will have second cities when you have proper states and proper delimitation. Central planning central planning has a particular kind of role. There are markets where the information asymmetry is very high or the risk reward is very poor, where classic free trade economics doesn't work. You would not want classic free trade economics purely in the healthcare sector, for example, or in airline regulation.
Or even in academia research, probably theoretical physics and pure maths and stuff.
Correct. So I am, again, as I said, I'm not a dogmatist. I'm someone who will simply see what kind of outcomes am I getting. If the outcome is good, the system is good. And it reminds me, Deng Xiaoping used to say, I do not care if the cat is black or white. If it catches mice, it's a good cat.
Right.
India needs to adopt the same kind of outlook.
Now, how much do you think a constitution is a DNA of a country? For us, it probably isn't. But there has been so much propaganda surrounding the constitution since its inception that today constitution might be in the veins of a lot of people today. and that might be a problem, because the key distinction I see between India and US is the constitution, and the US constitution, I think, was written in a way that so that the system is not dependent upon good, nice, cute, and honorable people coming to power. The system functions on its own. It does not depend on honest people and stuff. Whereas I think even the goal of our politicians and founding fathers has been that good people come to power and run the country, and that has been one of the most disappointing things I've read from Dr. Ambedkar. I think in the very first pages of Annihilation of Christ of Caste, he writes that even a good document can turn bad and stuff. But a good document should not turn bad in the hands of bad people. That's what a good document is. So is the mentality, can the mentality be fixed among Indians?
So we need to contextualize Dr. Ambedkar also. He was essentially coping for the fact that these are the kind of people who've come.
Yeah.
Dr. Ambedkar was a deeply embittered person after he left active politics.
Okay.
He was actually broken. He was a broken man in his last days. He was deeply disappointed with Nehru and Patel. Not because of caste, only caste.
Yeah.
He could see the direction which India was taking. He was not happy.
I see.
Dr. Ambedkar has actually lost constitutional cases in front of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
When you see the irony, the person who drafted the bloody thing, the Supreme Court is saying that that's wrong.
Yeah.
So, firstly, that. Secondly, when it comes to this whole problem, good people, bad people, institutions, so on and so forth, what is a constitution's purpose? A constitution is defined by its purpose. I have definitive quotations from both Nehru and Patel that this constitution was supposed to be transitionary in nature. It was not permanent. Patel said this constitution is for 10 years. I have given proper citations for these statements in my book.
I see.
Secondly, the purpose of the constitution, which I was coming to, here in India, we have a tendency to deify anything that is vested with power. So when the Supreme Court says that the constitution is sovereign and this constitutional morality, आप decide कर लीजिए आप constitution की बात कर रहे हैं या Bible की बात कर रहे हैं.
Yeah.
Some आसमानी किताब has come down.
Yeah.
The constitution was made by perfectly average people who were trying to do their best in the circumstances they were put in.
Yeah.
There's nothing fundamental about the constitution. It is simply to tell this is what the state will be. These are the organs. This will be how it is governed.
Yeah.
The American constitution is of a unique nature because America is actually a federation, unlike India. If you discount the propaganda, India is nowhere near a federation. Tomorrow the parliament says this state will not exist. It will not exist. It does not need to even bother with the state's opinion on its own existence.
We are quasi-federal, and so we don't get the benefits of federalism, not the benefits of centralization, really.
So that's a very lazy way of saying India has evolved some kind of a system which we cannot make sense of.
Yeah.
Quasi-federal, the term itself was actually given by some Westerner. I'm forgetting that honorable jurist's name. It's because he had no other mental model other than federalism.
Yeah.
The moment Supreme Court in one of its, again, great judgments said that federalism is part of the basic structure, that is when the rot started. Arey bhai, Ambedkar himself said that India is a single imperium derived from a single source. इससे ज़्यादा unitary क्या होता है? America's condition was very unique because we had 13 people with 13 different economic interests, 13 different sources of identity, who were saying that we need to come together under some sort of a union to survive.
Yeah.
So the American Constitution is a bargain between 13 original states.
Yes.
What is the Indian Constitution? It doesn't know its own purpose.
Yeah.
It's like some teenager who's still figuring things out. And you've got the Prime Minister bound down to it and deifying it. It reminds me, when Mao actually got a bunch of mangoes as a gift from Pakistan. And Mao then distributed the mangoes amongst his cadre. 3 months later, rotten mangoes are being kept at altars and there's incense being wafted at it. This is constitution. So the constitution for this country ideally is simply a document which underlines the basic understanding between the Rajya and the Rashtra. Any clear enunciation of what a constitution in the Indian context ought to be is the constitution as in the system of the Rajya and its relationship with the Rashtra. The cardinal mistake we did was using the Rajya to modify the Rashtra instead of taking inspiration from the Rashtra for the Rajya's functioning. You've got complete top-down thing going on, which basically means a small elite, which are coconuts, brown from outside, white from inside. The coconuts sit on top of us, and they decide what we should do, shouldn't do, how our temples should be regulated, how our economic life should be regulated. You know, whether we will get food or not, PL40 scheme से अमेरिका से खाएंगे कि नहीं खाएंगे, you know, आज कुछ बनेगा कि नहीं बनेगा, यहाँ इंडस्ट्री बनेगा कि नहीं बनेगा, स्टील प्लांट लगेगा कि नहीं लगेगा. Then you know, if you're lucky, if it's unfortunate enough for you to get an idea to do entrepreneurship, you'll need to get 700 different forms, give it to 10 different offices, support it, you know, with your mother's horoscope in triplicate. The whole reason for this mess is because the constitution wasn't clear about what it wanted to do. Which is why either you need a rapid, and the book also argues for it in concrete terms, which articles need to be modified in which way. So I will not go into too much detail. The reader can, of course, figure it out and find it amongst themselves. But in general, I'm also calling for a constitutional revolution in this country. Either get a new one or modify the current thing completely. Otherwise, you will neither be a good economy, neither will you be a stable society. And I'm saying this as a student of law, as a practitioner of law.
By the way, guys, so do remember to buy his book as soon as possible if you haven't already. Now, Deekhit, are you on top of all your research right now? So if I ask you on what basis you made these divisions for some of the states, because we have a huge group of viewers from Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Gujarat and Bengal mainly, and some Delhi people. So if we discuss those specific states, would you be able to?
Let me do my best for that.
Okay. Let's see. So why these states? Haryana, Hastinapur, Panchal, and Haryana, Delhi together?
No, they're not together. So Delhi's size has been drastically reduced.
So this one is Delhi.
This one is Delhi. Delhi's size has been drastically reduced. The whole point of a capital is for it to not be a state. You've got Delhi, which is absolutely massive. It's got 4 layers of governance. None of those layers are working. Thanks to one Arvind Kejriwal, you had drama like Shaheen Bagh go on for so long.
But why though? Aren't the police supposed to be controlled by Amit Shah?
Yeah, but what about the local politics? Your councillor, you take a look at the Delhi riots which happened. Municipal councillors were involved.
Yeah.
These people have access to funding and networks.
Yeah.
Right. So the purpose of a capital is all the important buildings to the extent possible. So in Delhi, for example, we have different municipal councils. South has a different northern. There's this place called there's this council called NDMC, New Delhi Municipal Council.
Okay.
Which is simply the Rashtrapati area, Lutyens area, and the important buildings.
Okay.
That combined with armed forces installations, I have limited Delhi to just that. The other parts, which are ethnically, economically, politically, looking either ways. So one part has gone to Hastinapur, which is current Western UP. Jamnapar, Delhi has gone to Hastinapur, where the future has always been. Artificial. So Delhi's boundaries also are a very interesting case. Delhi didn't have any boundaries till 1911. They were carved out of the erstwhile state of Punjab. And you have one portion of Delhi which is divided by the river Yamuna and comes on the other side. To this day, Delhiites this side look down upon the Jamnapar people. And those people have had a separate history because they're trading with Western Uttar Pradesh. They speak the dialect from Western Uttar Pradesh. They're a trading entrepot for Western Uttar Pradesh onward to Punjab. What are they doing in Delhi? So part has gone to Hastinapur, which is part of today's Western Uttar Pradesh, a part has gone to Haryana, and it's very important for Haryana to actually have a proper metropolis because it itself is unsure of its identity. Right now, the problem with Haryana is the dominance of the Jats as a group. Notably, that dominance is not demographic.
Oh,
It's economic.
what the fuck? I see.
And the reason why they've managed to
Demographically, who is dominant then?
there's no super dominant fellow there.
I see. Okay.
And the fact of the matter is the economic interest of say a Jat and a Sani are almost identical until and unless
Okay.
that Jat is well landed.
Oh,
And if a Sani is well landed, his economic interest is far more in common with the Jat who is well landed than with his own kin. So
I
it's
see.
very important for that place to have a metropolis so that there's this counteraction to the Jat dominance there, which is economic. Then Panchal, again, this is actually both a historical region as well. This region, if you see, its agricultural, political, social, and economic makeup has always been somewhat unique. This is basically the entry point between the plains and the hills. And most of their economy has always been structured around that basis. So you've got a people who are experts at trading between the hills and the plains. There used to be seasonal migrations of traders from here to there in erstwhile Panchal. What happens is if I club Panchal with the rest of UP, they cannot specialize in what they do best. They are people who are people of both the passes as well as, where the plains begin. So they do their own unique kind of agriculture, which is suited to their microclimatic conditions, which is getting spoiled today because, the entire state has single policies of how to do agriculture and what kind of fertilizers to subsidize and what not to. Do you know NPK, the ratio between NP and K should change as per the soil and the water conditions of the place? Correct. That doesn't happen in this country because you're subsidizing them at the national and state level. You're destroying the soil of, large parts of this country simply due to these small things. So like that, Hastinapur is sort of like a doaba kind of thing, hemmed between two rivers. And there also, it's actually it's a semi-arid region, somewhat like Haryana. But at the same time, they have a lot of cultural and trade relations with Braj. And a bit with Panchal.
I see.
Again, they can't and then because they're getting parts of Delhi, the Jamna part, Delhi, and so on and so forth, they are also sort of a trading link between Mewar, Braj, and the rest of the north.
Okay.
These states are all crafted as per supply chains going from here and there historically and present.
Okay. Next, let's discuss Maharashtra.
So,
what is it based on? The divisions, the newer divisions, and what about Marathi identity?
which one?
What about Marathi identity? And if you organize states this way, what will happen to the Marathi identity?
That's what I'm
Will
saying.
that get lost? I see. Yeah.
You're telling
Let's
me
say you are face to face with Raj Thackeray, and you have to explain to him what sort of debate is that going to be? The Marathi identity he wants to protect.
Why can't there be 6 Marathi speaking states? What's the problem? Will suddenly people stop speaking Marathi if some other state fellow is also speaking Marathi? And I'm not doing it uniquely to Maharashtra. No, there are 3 Bengali speaking states.
Yeah.
One of the first news breaks for my book came from Assam because I'm pretty sure the Assamese were very happy that Bengal is getting divided.
I mean, this looks like a brilliant idea. At least Mallabhuma and Gowda. Wait, we will come to Bengal later on. First, let's discuss Maharashtra.
Yeah. So here the thing is, look, Vidarbha is a very long-standing thing. I think both the economic, political, and social rationale for that is very well defined. 1956 State Reorganization Commission also said Bhai Vidarbha has no business doing anything in Maharashtra.
Hmm.
Right. At the same time, let me have a look. Who are the poster childs of Marathi identity? That is the Maratha Empire.
Hmm.
Under, of course, the Veer Chhatrapatis who defended our dharma.
Hmm.
So under them, was there a Maharashtra?
No.
You love the Chhatrapatis, no?
Yeah.
तो उनकी गवर्नेंस से क्या प्रॉब्लम है आपको?
Hmm.
When they treated that Pune region differently, when they treated Vidarbha differently, when they clearly had a different kind of administration for the coastal areas.
Hmm.
You like the Chhatrapatis as long as they are just photos on a wall.
Hmm.
You want to reduce the Chhatrapatis only to people who have photos on a wall instead of following their dicta,
Yeah.
instead of following their governance. Right? I'm तो saying, मैं तो बोल रहा हूँ छत्रपति जी का सिस्टम बेस्ट है.
Hmm.
Now, if Raj Thackeray has a problem with the Chhatrapatis, then of course, there's nothing more I can say to her.
Yeah. What will be the breakup of Gujarat based on?
See, this is actually a very interesting and a very clear case. यहाँ तो
Okay.
even the climatic conditions are very clear.
Hmm.
Kutch, Kshetra, Saurashtra each have different climates, different food, but most importantly,
see.
their economic concerns are very different and historically have different.
Oh.
So Kutch, which is marshland, and which is seasonal marshland and otherwise a desert,
Hmm.
Kutch is ideal for being the solar capital of India. So Kutch had historically traded with Sindh and been involved, but that is not possible as long as the excrescence known as Pakistan exists, which I'm sure won't exist for too long. But nonetheless, until that time. So Kutch, meanwhile, what can it specialize in? Kutch has the highest average solar irradiance in the entire country.
Oh. I see.
Tomorrow, if Kutch merely specializes only in solar power, not only will they be rich,
Hmm.
but our cost of making electricity for the rest of the country will go down drastically.
Hmm.
And of course, they practically have a monopoly on salt.
Hmm.
There's actually wonders of the socialist state. There's actually an Indian salt service. It has something like 30 people in it total. They've got buildings and all. They've got a nice headquarter and everything.
Which reminds me, I'll have to ask you, have you read up a lot on PC Mohalanobish? What do you think of him?
Everyone's a product of his times here.
Hmm.
I have respect for him, but that's the thing. You have to see the patrata of the entire situation, Desh Kal Par.
Yeah. So what's going to happen to Karnataka?
Nothing is going to revert to what it was. I'm doing nothing new here. I'm not pulling some rabbit out of the hat here. Mysuru, which used to be the 8 old districts of old Mysore, geographically, politically, culturally, cuisine, they have their own identity intact, and they do things a certain way there.
So Tulunadu is a pretty big state.
Yeah.
I see.
Because again,
so the Tulu people are actually that significant demographically even.
Yes, not only are they significant, demographically significant, because they're not being allowed to capitalize on their historical potential of interstate trade with Malabar on one end and across the Western Ghat onwards towards the Konkan, because they're not being allowed to specialize. They're not being allowed to come up the way they probably could.
I see. That's what I was recently hearing. Since I don't know anything about Karnataka politics, I heard that there's a lot of tensions between the Kannadiga pride folk and the Tulunadu people as well, the Tulu people.
So let the Kannadiga fellow say that Krishna Deva Raya is not my king. वो तो Tulu थे ना. The Devarayas, most of them were Tulu.
What do you think of the language politics of specifically first the Kannadiga pride people and then Bangla Pakko? What do you think of their arguments and their concerns and stuff?
I mean, you See, the whole point is their arguments might be schizophrenic, but they're underlying real anxieties. I want to address their anxieties and finish off this problem instead of trying to get bogged down in their arguments, which are like a hydra. Of one head, something else will come. Their fundamental anxiety is that I need to have equal bargaining power with my competitor states. I need to have equal bargaining power vis-a-vis other states in Delhi. It has got to do very, very, very little with language, which is why let's go. Let's do that again. The alternative history of linguistic politics in India. We can take that up a little later. But here, I am addressing their anxieties by equalizing the states, and I'm giving multiple states essentially have the same language now. Different dialects, maybe they'll standardize it differently. In Tamil Nadu's case, they definitely will standardize it. Tamil Nadu's alphabet was artificially standardized by those Dravidian people to cut out certain sounds in certain dialects.
Even the Bengali language you and I speak, that's not spoken outside Kolkata in the entire state.
No.
Yeah.
You listen to someone from East Bengal speaking Bangla.
Yeah. I can't understand the Bangla that's spoken in Bankura.
And here's the thing, good that you pointed out Bankura. Bankura's economics has got to do nothing with Kolkata.
Yeah.
Bankura's food has got to do nothing with Kolkata.
Yeah.
Just because they speak dialects which might be clubbed together on a linguistic basis, those poor fellows are stuck here.
Yeah. And ideally, Bankura should be our art and culture capital, not Kolkata. Kolkata is just a hub of copying British people, but real West Bengal culture might be Bankura.
No. Atlami is their fundamental right.
Yeah. Now, what about the concern of the concerns you raise? They might be the real concerns, but I don't think the movement sustains on real concerns. The movement sustains on fake concerns. So, what about the concern of the true Bangalore identity or the culture getting diluted and destroyed because of so many outsiders?
Good. No, I'm giving you a state. I'm giving Bangalore more control over itself because now it doesn't have to take into account North Karnataka. It doesn't have to take into account so many concerns. It can focus on its own identity and small concerns.
Right.
That's another matter that they will probably oppose it because they'll figure that what happens if North Karnataka figures this out, that they can specialize in things like mines and minerals and become richer than us.
Yeah.
So then there will be a healthy competition for quality immigrants as well. How is it that Surat has so many immigrants? Many of them from the accursed Bihar.
Yeah.
How is there no problem in Surat, but there are problems in Cal?
Yeah.
Ultimately, what happens is politics and economics are intertwined. You change one, you end up changing the other over time.
Yeah. Why Padmanabha Kshetram?
See, Padmanabha Kshetram actually is one of the most historically isolated places in Bharatvarsh.
I see.
They have evolved a very different and distinct identity, and they are absolute beasts when it comes to foreign trade.
I see.
As a matter of fact, I think even Trivandrum, Trivandrum is silently emerging as an IT and startup powerhouse because of the sheer openness to foreign ideas, foreign trade.
Oh.
Different. So, the mental makeup of the people has to reflect in the state.
Now, what about Rayalaseema and Tondai Mandalam?
So, Tondai Mandalam is North Tamil Nadu. Rayalaseema is carved out from modern Andhra. So, as I had already told you, Tamil Nadu has three distinct things.
Yeah.
Tondai Mandalam is one of them. And these are the uplands which are largely rain shadow. So, these people need to adapt distinctly from Pandya Nadu, economically, socially, politically, which reflects to this day. Similarly, Tondai Mandalam, if I take modern politics, modern Tamil politics, here, the dominance of a party against another party is far greater because of the caste equation there also. I'm trying to keep homogeneity here also, as we discussed. So, Tondai Mandalam in general will be ideal for certain kinds of trade, for certain kinds of agriculture, for certain kinds of industry as well, and particularly, northwards as the Coromandel coast goes on, all of these states will ultimately have to find some way of coexisting and building supply chains. All of them have both historical, economic, social basis. Now, Andhra Pradesh, I'll take a small detour.
Yeah.
The formation of Andhra Pradesh was actually a federal state. How? The leaders of coastal Andhra had a gentleman's agreement with Rayalaseema leaders.
I see.
And the deal was that Kurnool will be made capital.
Okay.
And there will be a certain division of finances. After Operation Polo, when Telangana came, coastal Andhra leaders again had a gentleman's agreement with Telangana leaders. So the state of Andhra Pradesh, erstwhile state of Andhra Pradesh, was actually a federal compact between three different states. And because these leaders are distinct, you can clearly see these people were thinking of themselves as distinct. They came together for economic and political reasons. Now, when the deal didn't go through, which is that, Kurnool was never made capital, Hyderabad centralized everything, and politics became dominated by people from a certain region, the federal compact fell apart. Hence, you had the very first linguistic state in India becoming the very first to not be a linguistic state.
Right.
Federal compact fell apart, the deal fell apart. But these parts of history no one teaches, of course.
Yeah. So a pretty gigantic Odisha.
Yeah, but population-wise, it's not that great. And here, what I'm basically saying is, that Kotak, Bhubaneswar elite anyways dominates everything. Those people in the interior whose destiny has always been with central India pertaining to mining, forestry, this and that, they've always been overshadowed by the dominance of Bhubaneswar Kotak. Economically as well. So why is it that for so long, amongst the poorest districts, 100 poorest districts in India, so many of them fell in that region? There was a systematic neglect, and Odisha is actually the starting point for the linguistic states movement in India. It is not Andhra.
Yeah.
And within that thing, Sambhalpur, which today belongs to modern day Odisha, but it has connections with central India. When people and leaders of Sambhalpur merged into Odisha, they regretted it right after. They've been regretting it since. And there's documentary evidence of that regret.
Okay.
That just because we speak the same language, we got stuck here. But my economic interests are on the other side of the border. I can't trade freely. I can't specialize in what I do. I don't get investments from Bhubaneswar Kotak because they don't think what I do is important. Hence this current boundary.
Now we have a question. Why is Telangana so big in your map?
Population nahi. Region is same. I mean, climatically, that entire region is almost the same. It's a flat land. And it's a very harsh climate by the way. So there, heavy industries, mining, things like that will do great. But because of the centrality of Hyderabad and the dominance of the coastal Andhra elite, a combination of these two, those industries were never set up. I think provided they get rid of a government which has bankrupt them, they might do great for themselves going forward.
How does the film industries of these states get affected with your plan or because of your plan?
Not much, because film is ultimately about language, no? Whether there's one state speaking Marathi or the same state divided into 6 states speaking Marathi hardly matters. The market remains the same. However, amongst the niche audience, I can foresee, certain efflorescence occurring.
Yeah.
Because when you uncover the thinking of each of these states, and they start thinking of themselves as distinct people with distinct interests, distinct history, those aspects of history and culture will get a fillip.
Yeah.
And I think as Indians, we'll be able to appreciate a diversity better.
Yeah. There will be more film industries probably in different states. If one state does great economically because of the reorganization, that money will go into arts and culture only.
Correct. Overall, when a wave comes, when a tide comes, all of the boats are lifted. This will cause a tide of the economies across this country.
Yeah. So why so many states out of Bihar and UP? What are their bases?
Massive population densities while having great amount of diversity.
Hmm.
So Kashi and
Jharkhand,
Awadh
Magadh.
historically remain separate, speak different dialects, think of themselves as separate, have different interests with respect to trade also. Kashi has far more to do with Mithila and Baghelkhand. Awadh was
Okay,
far more agrarian that way and far less focused on trade,
I see.
right? So Kashi, for example, it has a lot of beyond just Kashi Vishveshwar. There are a lot of temples here which are neglected by the state. Lot of
Okay.
old centers also. Kashi can easily become the spiritual capital of the country, as in the state.
Hmm.
And even right now, actually, this Kashi corridor and the 9 districts of
Yeah.
Kashi, which UP has, they came up
Yeah.
after this book. I was surprised that
Hmm.
it corresponds almost perfectly to the map.
I see. Now we will discuss West Bengal. No, let's come to West Bengal later on. What are you doing to Assam? Let's see. So Bodopur. Is this what the Bodo terrorism or separatist movement was all about? Are you giving them what they wanted? This
So here's the
Bodopur?
thing. Here's the thing. Whenever I speak to people who've been IPS officers or people of the forces, the one thing they say that why we shouldn't have too many states is they fear that it may have a detrimental impact on national security. There may be secessionism because of states, right?
Hmm.
Historically, however, whenever India has made new states, insurgency has gone down. There is not a single case where we made a new state and insurgency has gone up.
Actually, Mamata Banerjee kind of, let's say, has solved the problem for now in terms of the Gurkha problem, the Gurkha land problem, by
Force
actually creating more
solution,
districts. It's a temporary solution, but it's she just divided the district. Darjeeling used to be one, the DGHC, and the actual place hill station called Darjeeling used to rule the roost and take away all the money and the
correct, correct.
services, all the state funds and Kalimpong and that all the other hill stations used to always be very much in poor conditions. There, I used to live there. I lived there for 4 years, and 2 buckets of water in a week would be like making us consider ourselves lucky. And after 7:30 p.m., forget your 100-watt bulb. It will look like a cigarette. And there were 2 3 lakes reservoirs, only one of which functioned because all the state funds were being used up by Darjeeling district, the Darjeeling hill station. Yeah,
Clientalistic politics. Here
yeah.
also Bodo, it's actually not one-on-one with the Bodo Territorial Council. So
Acha.
we had the toughest time drawing borders
Hmm.
when it came to Mithila, when it came to Indrakil, and when it came to Bodo.
Okay.
We've actually had to go down to the taluka level and see the histories individually of those sub-regions.
Okay.
So even in, say, Indrakil's case, where Darjeeling would now belong, there are actually enclaves of districts here. There's a piece of one district in another district, and it's a complete mess. There's some sort of solution when it comes to the Gorkhaland Territorial Council, but it's a very poor solution.
Hmm. Where is Siliguri? In Kamtapur or Indrakil?
It's Kamtapur, though Shiliguri as a district has been divided.
Acha, acha.
Hmm.
So right where Shevok Road starts and the hill start, you're putting that in Indrakil.
We've taken a look at the roads and the demographics, and we've seen historically, is there any case where maybe they belong to a community, but the trading interest lies somewhere? We've
Right.
taken all of that in account and drawn them in.
Okay.
But I mean, look, this is essentially the work of two individuals. There will be, of course, a states reorganization committee if this ever goes forward. They'll
Yeah,
take
yeah, yeah.
a broader look of the thing.
Right. What's the basis for Kamtapur's existence?
So Kamtapur has parts. Kamtapur is Kuch Bihar, parts of erstwhile Bihar, and so on. Demographically, it's the same. Here, historic Gauda, the parts which have remained with us.
Right.
Historic Gauda, the parts which have remained to us, because A, the hills and the plains start merging here. Here, the concern becomes more about trading with the north instead of the agriculture and international trade via the south. And here, if you see demographically, it will be one of the states where Muslims will be in good concentration, 40 odd percent.
Yeah, that's the comment we just got, that Kamtapur will be a Muslim majority.
They'll behave better if you give them, and they won't be a majority, by the way. They'll be around 40 odd percent. But nonetheless, they'll behave better because let them sink or swim, yeah, on their own.
Hmm.
In my
I
constitutional
see.
scheme, in my constitutional scheme, I have taken a lot of funding, etc., from the union, but I've strengthened the union when it comes to national security.
Hmm.
I have argued that if the need be, there should be draconian provisions for dismissing the state government.
Hmm.
So in that sense, I think the
Hmm.
risk is well covered. And let them sink or swim. Yeah, then they will also learn that they can make money a certain way by behaving themselves properly. Let them
Hmm.
let them be the masters of their own destiny. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, and if at all Hindus face a problem in Kamtapur, what should they do? Run to Mallabhum or Gauda,
No,
or
I've
maybe
actually I've
Assam?
actually argued vehemently that policing is a part of national security. It actually shouldn't be a state subject. It has to be a concurrent subject.
Hmm.
National
Now,
so policing, just for some context,
hmm.
the origin for policing belonging in the state list comes from the erstwhile government of India acts under the British, right?
Hmm.
At that point, we simply ran with the list and we gave policing that power as a means to accommodate certain elites and their designs in independent India. This
Okay.
system is not working well, as we saw with Murshidabad.
Hmm. Yeah, of course.
So when the need arises, there should be a strong center which is willing to take control of the police forces without an emergency, as in taking control of the state itself. Hence, I've
Hmm.
strongly argued the policing ecosystem has to be tied in with our national security policy, has to be tied in with the other elements of our national security agencies, and it should be a concurrent list subject. There is no reason whatsoever for policing to be a state subject.
Hmm. What happens in the situation if Mamata Banerjee is the prime minister and now she can bypass the chief minister of Maharashtra and police Maharashtra according to her wishes?
See, it won't, of course, be according to her wishes per se, because when I'm suggesting this, I'm also suggesting an institutional mechanism. And the point of the institutional mechanism, to go back to our opening comments, is to
Hmm.
prevent bad apples from doing too much damage.
Hmm. Right.
Right? Even today,
Okay.
let's say we have the army at the center's disposal. When was the
Hmm.
last time you saw the army mobilized to dismiss a state government?
Hmm. We have some very important questions now. We'll take some of them right now. Do you support Delhi as capital or capital somewhere else?
It can be somewhere else. Ideally, it should be somewhere more at the center of the country.
Right.
Ujjain maybe.
Okay. Okay. So you have given a state for Nagalims. Another secessionist movement you are rewarding. The most ancient secessionist movement of India.
I'm not rewarding anyone, and calling them a secessionist movement is actually a shame because it's essentially an extended drug trafficking ring.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest and blunt about it. It
Hmm.
is not a secessionist movement per se. It is clothed in the language of secessionism simply to give it some
Yeah.
kind of political viability.
Yeah.
And here, what am I rewarding? By changing the name of a state to something which is in their native language.
Yeah.
Why?
Christian socialism. I think they are the only groups in the world who have figured out that they are essentially the same things.
Correct.
Uh, Now, so an AFSPA-like thing for everyday policing. Also, how do you then limit the times when the center can police a state?
I wouldn't say AFSPA in the sense that AFSPA actually, if you read the law, if you read the act, it is
Hmm.
very draconian in some sense, but has very important vulnerabilities also.
Okay.
I'm saying essentially, and what I'm saying is, like we have, take state finances for example.
Hmm.
Each state under the constitution can borrow from the market,
Hmm.
correct? However, the RBI has imposed limits on each state with regards to their financial performance, so that because if one state borrows beyond their means, it actually becomes a headache of the union and the rest of the states to bail them out. This
Yeah.
case went to this is Kerala's case. It went all the way to Supreme Court. So you actually have this dual track system where the center operates as a sort of high level regulator and steps in when needed.
Hmm.
right? The fact of the matter is the Supreme Court, due to the experience of the emergency, has unnecessarily restrained the union in a number of things, including when it comes to imposing governor's rule or president's rule.
Okay. Hmm.
However, I'm saying, is there any method for the
Hmm.
central government to take control of the forces without dissolving the assembly or without
Hmm.
imposing presidents?
Okay.
My suggestion is this. Of course, the finer details will have to be worked out over time. And neither is it, the basis for my book.
Hmm.
But there are some ideas. I have discussed a few ideas with some people. If you bring it to the concurrent list, you will then need to take it to the parliament, decide on a framework, maybe have a regulator for the same. Because tomorrow, when incidents like Murshidabad are happening to occur or Darbhanga is happening to occur,
Hmm.
this is not a problem of a state of violence in a state. This is a
Hmm.
problem of national security of one community against the other and of enemies of the state operating within our country.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no basis whatsoever for the state government to shield them.
Hmm.
So, like that, we can also argue. So, AFSPA per se is actually it pertains more to the deployment of the armed forces in the boundaries of the state, not the police.
Yeah. Now, I'll get back to Bengal. I just have one question about Magadh, which will be kind of relevant to Bengal as well. Why Magadh first and foremost, and how does it affect the caste equations and caste politics of this region?
It gives each caste its own area so it doesn't step on the other.
Hmm.
Even though that was not the purpose, but because
Yeah.
the moment you do it climatically, regionally, economically, it generally corresponds with caste equation,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? So the moment Magadh historically, centered around Patliputra, that Patna
Hmm.
centricity of Bihar will go away.
Yeah.
Everything belongs to Patna. Mithila was systematically discriminated against by the early Congress governments because the Raja of Darbhanga had a very long running personal dispute with the chief minister. Mithila was
Hmm.
one of the first areas where the Rajas were investing a lot in activities such as industrialization, airlines. So, the Raja was investing a lot, and because he had a feud with the Patna Congress chief minister, he used the force of the law to essentially deindustrialize Mithila.
I see.
And it's written in detail in the book as to how that occurred and whatnot, because Mithila is
I
one of our
see.
case studies. But
Okay.
I am making sure that nothing of this sort ever happens again.
Hmm.
Let each sink or swim on their own merits.
Okay. Since you said sink or swim about Kamtapur as well, I have an interesting controversial question here, which I may or may not endorse. That's not the point here. 40% Islam is not a good idea from a security perspective in a $2,800 GDP per capita country. Effective number of religions become to
Inverse
both
of
by
our
inverse of, yeah. Then what do we do about Kamtapur?
Nowhere have I said that the union should have identical security and policing apparatus with respect to each state. Some states might be so. The new law which may come pertaining to how the concurrent system will work,
Hmm.
maybe the center will be given power to put certain states in a schedule where the powers will be far greater with the center.
Hmm.
I am all for asymmetric federalism.
Right. That's actually a question here as well. Should border states be president ruled?
You already have the BSF given powers within 50 kilometers of the borders. Sufficient.
Hmm.
Right now,
But we keep hearing.
the lacunae, the BSF still has to give it to the state police to charge anyone. I think that should be done away with.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask, because the complaint I've heard even from like right wing RSS BJP supporter people is that BSF can't really go into certain sections of West Bengal no matter how much power or guns they have, because the local authorities and police won't coordinate with them or cooperate with them.
And that will also be solved if you have concurrent governance. No?
Right. And so you are breaking up Kolkata between Mallabhum and Gowda.
Correct.
Okay. And that does definitely wonders for the BBK authority. I don't know what that does for Tollywood though. There might not be a Tollywood to save by the time this happens. Why Mallabhum and why Gowda?
Essentially, varying economic interests historically as well as presently.
Hmm.
You see, all of Eastern India, as Sanyal also has said, all of Eastern India has suffered because of Kolkata's non-performance.
Exactly.
Correct. It is the central node when it comes to international trade in the East, and utter junk has happened there.
Yeah.
Right. At the same time, Mallabhum region, it is far closer in its economic interest to central India. They're far more into mining, they're far more into forestry, they're far more into those things, which Kolkata
Yeah.
elites never, add, because it's one of those unsocialistic things. Mining is
Yeah.
evil.
Yeah.
It is where the capitalists come and loot away all your things.
Yeah, so they become religious people when they discuss Mollabhum, because that's when it's all about tribal, local deities and people worshipping the mountain and the hill around them, and you can't do mining there, bro, because it's all about religion all of a sudden for them.
So let the people in Mallabhum decide, no, why are you sitting in Kolkata? Unless, of course, I'm sure the Kolkata elite are working very hard to, actualize that machine where you put in potatoes and you get gold, so you don't need to mine for gold
Yeah.
anymore. I'm sure they're working very hard on it. But let
Hmm.
Mallabhum in the interim decide on its own course.
Hmm. Uh, Now, what I'm going to ask to that question, your answer might also be let them decide, which is a pretty libertarian thing to do, and I have no real problem with it. But I'm just curious, what do you think about the some mountains and hills and regions being sacred to some tribes, and therefore them protesting mining in the first place? How do we do mining in that situation?
The the arbiter between my identity and faith and my economic concerns can only be decided by me,
Hmm.
unless it is of utmost national importance, like, let's say, for example, uranium is present.
Hmm.
In general, there are very few pockets which are unique in India with respect to the resources available. You
Hmm.
generally have alternatives available, and let us not forget, India is one of the most poorly explored mineral regions of the world.
Hmm.
We don't even know where most of our minerals are.
Hmm.
It's very poorly explored. So when it comes to the tribes, when it comes to the people of the land, you definitely need to have a proper dialogue with them
Hmm.
about these are your choices, which choice do you want to make? Because if you make their choice on their behalf, the
Hmm.
resentment can have disastrous consequences down the line. At the
Hmm.
same time, you have to explain them in utmost sincerity that your choice will affect other people also.
Hmm.
Your mining will get processed somewhere else, your children will get jobs. So based on the local conditions, yeah, you will have to have some kind of a compact which is localized to that situation. You can't have a one size fits all.
Hmm. And
And
to
these are
be, yeah,
and these are
go
not
on.
people who are irrational simply because they live in the forest. Sorry.
Hmm.
Just because they live in the forest and you romanticize them as some kind of, early dwellers, as if
Yeah.
they've dropped in right after the Neanderthals. No. These are
Yeah.
intelligent people who are thinking for themselves and the future generations.
Hmm.
Stop infantilizing them.
Yeah. Just 2 3 years back, a Facebook post in Bengali had gone viral from a mountaineering and trekking group of Kolkata, almost entirely run and participated by Brahmins, both those guys, who were criticizing so many investments and uh, mining some factories coming up in Purulia area, which is their favorite spot for trekking and hiking and stuff.
What needs to be
And
done? I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you.
yeah, yeah, go on.
We need to import a lot of these virtual reality headsets where
Yeah,
24/7 Pather Panchali plays, so that we can
yeah,
give these headsets to these people and they live in their own little
yeah,
wonderland.
yeah,
And the rest of the people, we are suffering because of their, ideations.
yeah. Yeah, I got hugely troubled and pissed off with that post. I mean, how dare they say development should not happen to Purulia? Such a dirt poor, mind fucking 55 degrees heat, and where you can't even visit and do your hiking in the summer. You only go there for 4 days in the winter, and that state is going that region is going to be dirt poor and broken and post nuclear apocalypse of a situation because you want to go there for 4 years in every year, just for in the winters
See,
and they will maintain your nature and environment for those 4 days and remain
see
poor the rest of
the
the
nature,
year.
the very nature of why our elites pretend as if the world stops at the capital
Hmm.
is because of how our states have been divided.
Hmm.
The rest of the state is nothing more than a resort for.
Hmm.
And whether we like it or not, this is human nature as it is. You just make the state smaller so that the distance is reduced.
Yeah.
Best you can do.
And to be truthful and fair, um, all the, let's say, people in those tribes who consider the hill around them or the forest around them so sacred that they can't allow mining there, in the very next generation they will send their kids to study and get jobs outside in other states anyway. So they are not going to stay back in their state for their god. So then why
And
prevent in
that's
the first
also the
place?
thing. And that's also the thing. So, for example, there's this university which I have been loosely associated with in the hills. I won't take names.
Okay.
They naturally acquired land from locals.
Okay.
And of course, land is an incredibly scarce resource in the hills, particularly fertile land. It was fertile land.
Okay.
So, what kind of compact came? They said that fine, for the next 3 generations, if your kids want to study here, we won't charge you.
Hmm.
You have to emerge
Nice.
and make compacts with the people based on the local circumstances to give their wishes and their potential the fullest flight. There is
Yeah.
no one size fits all. Today, they know that there is nowhere else to go except Kolkata, the capital, if they want jobs, which is why they're so interested in retaining whatever little they can.
Yeah.
But tomorrow, if I say that in the factory that will be set up or in the facility that will be set up to process those ores, the average pay will be this. I guarantee you that for the next 3 generations, if your kid wants to work here and he fulfills the basic requirements, I will give him a job without question. Maybe he will reconsider. And many a times, especially with these Gram Devatas or with these natural formation Devatas, these tribes sometimes do emerge with compact where they relocate the Devata. It happens all the time in Kerala.
I see.
There are processes when
Okay.
the lord of a certain mangrove, the devata of a certain mangrove, or say a lok yogini, or some power which is of the upadevata category of or someone of the ether yoni. There are processes to request them to relocate to a certain other appropriate place
I
which they have.
see.
In that
So
university, by the way, sorry,
theological processes only.
fully agamic processes, some of them are lok
Oh,
processes.
I
And
see.
in the university where I'm in,
Hmm.
there was a historical temple.
Hmm.
There was a historical temple with certain tantric origins. It's one of my favorite temples. It's very small, nothing significant until and unless
Okay.
you're staying there in the night and you're looking at the wonders that happen afterwards. But there's this historical temple. As a part of the acquisition deal, that temple was renovated and maintained by the university.
Ah, nice. Is it a private university or a government university?
It is a government university which turned private.
Oh, great. Where will be Mallabhum and Gowda capital?
Up to Mallabhum and Gowda.
Right.
I have indicated certain cities in a table which I've made.
Okay, in the book. So definitely buy his book and read it as soon as possible. This is a fascinating idea. Why no coast to Mallabhum?
You can't make a port there. Geography doesn't allow. Coast लेके क्या करोगे? Vacation.
No, I mean, why couldn't Mallabhum be extended up till here?
मैं बोल तो रहा हूँ वो coast बना नहीं सकते. You don't have the kind of conditions. You
Oh,
won't be able to
I see,
capitalize
I
on it.
see. Right. So this spot itself can't be a coast. Right, okay.
When you can't have deep water ports to export your minerals, what will you do with the coast?
Okay, now we will mainly take the live chat questions. Okay, there are countless questions and very, very interesting and fascinating questions as well. Jagan tried to make 3 capitals. Why did he fail or why didn't it work?
Well, Jagan tried to make 3 capitals. Firstly, because he was trying to pilfer money. Secondly, it was poorly thought. And thirdly, he was basically reverting to that federal compact, original federal compact which formed Andhra Pradesh.
Okay.
The reason why it did not work is because all 3 of the people involved in the federal compact are fed and done with each other.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Okay. Should Indian policing be on the American model, a central FBI-like organization that overrides state police?
FBI doesn't override state police. FBI only gets involved for interstate crimes.
Yeah.
So again, the finer details will have to be worked out by national security experts. But I think it is the starting point is fairly concrete, which everyone should agree to, that policing is not distinct from national security, and policing has to be a concurrent subject.
And you are saying that for all sorts of crimes like petty theft and stuff.
The finer details will again have to be worked out here.
Okay.
It's not the subject of my book.
How do we make this map a reality though? No one has the political capital for this. Even if BJP had that, they wouldn't do this unless it resulted in immediate political gains.
Ironically, it will result in political gains for almost everyone involved. Let
Exactly.
me explain how.
True. It should. Yes.
Let's go back to Tamil Nadu.
Hmm.
Today, either AIDMK can win or DMK can win.
Hmm.
One state, they're fighting over that one state. If I make
Yeah.
this, AIDMK will keep winning one state, DMK will keep winning one state.
Hmm.
There are no losers.
Hmm.
Many of the outfits, including national parties, are fundamentally caste and geographically isolated. Take a look at BJP in Karnataka.
Hmm.
Geographical isolation है ना उनका.
Yeah.
I'm making it easy. I'm saying that all of you will win more states compared to right now instead of fighting for the same pie.
Hmm.
The political elite should lap this up.
Hmm.
It's in their interest as well.
Yeah. With the breakup of Kolkata, how do you see it panning out in terms of the dominance of Brahmins, Buddhas, Kaistos? Because they will still be probably the cultural elites in both states, but at least one state will be better off from each other, and therefore be a help to the country in general. I think, and Eastern India in general.
In Arthashastra, if you read the extended commentaries and so on, there's a concept known as the Danda Bhukti.
Hmm.
Some states should be rewarded, some states should be punished.
Hmm.
Luckily for Kolkata, I don't need to punish it. They're punishing themselves. They'll figure it out soon.
Yeah. Why did Nehru resist Maharashtra state when he agreed one state, one language?
He's talking about the Bombay state which existed till 1960.
Hmm.
Gujarat and Maharashtra were
Yeah.
clubbed together. It was because the elite of both Gujarat and Maharashtra, which were represented in the Congress, had the business interests in both states.
Okay. Why did the British then move to large states? I always wondered what made them create one state that went from the borders of Hyderabad to Sindh.
To make sure Indians keep fighting with each other, have heterogeneous
Hmm.
states, easier to divide.
Hmm. This is a rhetorical question. What happens when you remove Kolkata from West Bengal? Actually, the state
Enlightenment.
benefits probably. Yeah, this we just did.
Wait.
Hmm. Yeah, political capital. Yeah, this we discussed. I have a feeling this map will give rise to many regional parties in the short term, but in the long term, this will turn India into a two-party state once every state tries local parties and fails.
Globally, no matter what kind of political federalism or lack thereof you apply, the situation reverts to a two-party state.
Hmm. If possible, could we go through some interesting capital recommendations that have been made in the book?
Why not? Sure. Let's see. Okay, so for example, let's go just randomly.
Yeah.
Generally, see, because these states become so homogeneous and centered, it's usually not even a question. Mewar will of course get Udaipur. Kutch will of course get Bhuj. Konkan will have Mumbai is the biggest. Goa will have Panaji. Some interesting ones I can say. Mithila will be Darbhanga.
Okay.
Historically, the center of both trade, commerce, and intellectualism, and as well as that the elite of that place still has a little bit of that entrepreneurship left. So that can be a case. Poshal will be Sambalpur. So
Okay.
Sambalpur state, we discussed that how they regretted after they joined Odisha. Essentially, Koshal will be an extended Sambalpur. Mallabhum will be Kharagpur, per me.
Okay.
Because they need that kind of heavy technology, they need that kind of mindset to mine and govern their forests properly. So let
Okay.
them be a technologically enabled, forward-looking, resource-driven state. That is my
Okay.
vision for Mallabhum.
Okay.
Then Telangana
For
will be
Gouda?
for Gouda.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one now you're putting me in a pinch. Naturally, it should be Kolkata. The problem is that how do we fix Kolkata? But again, in this regard, once you see Mallabhum gone, the kind of political pressures due to the economic nature of the state will change if you remove Mallabhum. And the demographics and the clientelistic politics, there will be a severe disruption. It's very
Yeah.
difficult for me to say right now what kind of a political impact may it have on Gouda. But overall, what I can say is because of this, the sensitivity to foreign trade will increase significantly. At some point, there will be political pressure to fix a lot of the nonsense that goes on. And again, industrially also, because the sensitivity to industry, the share of industry and foreign trade will go up in the overall matrix of the state, even if they don't do any reform, simply because Mallabhum got removed.
I
So the
see.
people there, it's up to them to be sensitive to the reality or continue living in delusions.
Do you see any side effects to breaking up of states? Because up until now I had been opposed to breaking up of West Bengal, because the people asking me this question were saying it should be broken up because of the our desert people problem, and I thought, why break up because of that? Because they will go to that hypothetical North Bengal as well, and create the same problems. What are you going to do then?
Sir,
Because the problem is policing.
there are trading towns, Mizoram and Nagaland, where the desert people have arrived. क्या बात कर रहे हो?
Yeah,
Jammu, there's a camp of 10,000 Rohingyas.
yeah. What might be the disadvantages? Do you see any? Steelman the opposing side's argument.
Disadvantage will be, see, fundamentally, the politically speaking, the greatest opponents to this will be, language pride fellows. But
Yeah, yeah.
at the same time,
That's the chief problem I see in Bengal
but
executing
there
this
is
idea
the
as well.
trouble. The language pride fellows are fundamentally proxies of one or the other political parties dominating.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What happens when the political elite in these parties realize that they have a safer political future if the states are divided? Will these proxies lose power because of that?
Hmm.
Because the political
Yeah.
patronage will stop.
Yeah.
It's an open question. I can't predict it.
Hmm. Why is Doad so long? This is an audience question.
Doab is between two rivers. Rivers tend to be long.
I see. Wait, let's just remind people how he has drawn Doab. So this is how Doab is
It's
according
also
to
the
his
historical.
plan.
Yes, it's also the historical stretch where 3 times crops are grown.
Okay. Okay. How is your work different from the work of Gautam Desiraju on delimitation? In what way is it different?
I've written the book with him. It's his work
Yeah. Yeah.
as well as him.
Who came up with this idea? Who approached whom here
We were
to
actually
collaborate
working
with
on,
the book?
we were actually collaborating already on certain other projects pertaining to
Okay.
supply chain science infrastructure in the country. Some policy things we were trying to figure out. And during the course of our discussions, I think both of us evolved a consensus amongst ourselves that
I see.
you cannot fix a lot of the supply chain issues in this country until you fix the economy. You cannot fix the economy unless you fix the way we are drawing our political boundaries.
I
So
see.
it sort of evolved between our dialogue. It was not planned as such.
Why are Santhal Parganas in Mithila?
I'll have to check, but again, it probably has to do far more with the trading interests.
Okay. Do you think there should be some kind of contract between state and districts, like on revenue sharing, progress, or anything else? If that breaches, they have the option to switch to other states. Yeah.
Interesting idea. But hard to say because the people in a district will not be the same over time.
Yeah.
Hard to difficult to say. Switching over to states also might have complications because then you might reintroduce political clientelism and destroy the whole point of the entire exercise.
Okay. Yeah. This split will lead to industries shifting to the coast, rendering inland industries defunct. Will it?
Opposite, because specialization will increase in land.
Exactly. Exactly. They will do some other great thing.
They will specialize on what they were already great at.
Won't subdivision of states lead to even more inequality between coastal and landlocked states? We'll have 10 elections every month with this kind of reorganization, but elections overall will be less important.
Anyways, this scheme will fit into one nation, one election overall. Also, the people in this country are very intelligent. They have on the same day of election, for example, in Odisha, voted for a different party for the state and for the center. They're not idiots.
Yes. Will every state have a state board?
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe a couple of states who speak the same language come together. Hard to say.
Okay. So how many states?
75.
Solar is still less sufficient than nuclear. India needs to up its nuclear power production. Yeah, that's a different topic.
Agreed.
Let's see. Okay. I noticed a lot of interesting questions. How is Kolkata's Jamunapur?
Jamna Par.
Yeah, Jamunapur.
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Delhi NCR of today is a real megalopolis with a very interlinked economy. Would that not be harmed? Would it not make more sense to expand Delhi to include all of NCR?
NCR already has 3 different state boundaries running. How will reorganizing the boundaries change anything?
Okay. My biggest concern is how do you resolve water wars, water sharing issues between states in this map?
Actually, you will end up localizing the issue. Right now, for example, Kaveri, let's take Kaveri because it's in the news recently. Right now, the dispute is between one large Tamil Nadu, one large Karnataka. Correct? The dispute will be down to South Karnataka and whoever that northern fellow is, it will become a small dispute between two small people. And because that poison of linguistic identitarianism will be gone after these states are redivided, you know, it won't become that emotive an issue because the linguistic proxies of these parties won't have much to do in this dispute. It won't become a Kannadiga versus a Tamil speaking person's problem. It will become a small dispute between two small states.
Okay. Should government even be involved in building cities?
Regulate, incentivize.
Yeah, this we discussed. Why did Karnataka try to annex Belgaum, and why did Maharashtra government ignore it? They basically handled it the way Indian government handled Kashmir. Belgaum Marathi residents suffered heavily under Karna.
Some kind of compact between the elite, I'm sure.
How do you know so much about all these states?
I wrote a book.
That's my question. And you remember all of that? Are you going to remember it for the foreseeable future? Because people usually don't remember all aspects of their research.
I don't remember all aspects of my research. It's just whatever comes to my mind based on whatever I had to read. I had the fortune of reading and studying and analyzing. And I'm trying to present whatever I retain.
Language pride fellows will shift to city-based pride, just like in old days.
Give them pitchforks.
Yeah. Is Manipur divided between Meitei and Kuki according to your plan?
Not yet. But it's for the people of Manipur to decide. Frankly, the problem which is happening right now has got to do little with Meiteis and Kukis and more about the right of the Kuki to buy land in the Meitei area and not vice versa. That can be fixed easily. This was completely avoidable and unnecessary.
Can you think of one problem in India which is not unavoidable and unnecessary?
Nehru Gandhi family.
Yeah. Is Doab just historic Mathura?
Not exactly. Sort of, but not exactly.
Okay.
Mathura will more be in Braj area, but it's a separate state.
Okay. Okay. Now I have to ask you, what sort of feedback are you getting about this book from? Have you pitched it to politicians and stuff? That this is my idea. Please, when do you plan to do something about it?
Privately, publicly, I've been posing it to all people who may be relevant to the conversation, particularly politicians. The foreword to this book has been graciously written by Professor Murli Manohar Joshi.
I see.
He was also deeply interested and invested in the project. So there are certain, and there's a sort of multi-party approach we have in the sense that there's people from all across the board who are interested in it. Approval, disapproval, distinct, and politicians tend to be furtive about these things. But there is some kind of interest because they know the clock is ticking. Delimitation, the clock is ticking, and they don't know what to do with it. I think the political elite of this country is completely clueless as to what it wants to do. My fear is they will either freeze the thing again and spoil it even further, or they will try to do some proportionate thing where based on the proportion of each state right now they'll increase in the same proportion. Both of these are horrible, horrible ideas which will set the country back by a decade minimum. So I am pitching to whoever is willing to listen. Now what they listen to and what they choose is their thing. We as constituents can only speak about it and discuss.
Now, what they say they agree with is also probably different from what they say in private and what they say in public.
Very much, because in private, when I tell them, boss, I'm giving you a state on a platter. Right now, you have to fight for a state.
Yeah.
I'm giving you one state on a platter. Think about it. And that's when they kind of realize that maybe this is the way to go. Because see, there's so many interests in a large country. You have to you have to align those interests so that the country can move forward. Yes. Our elite may not be the best of elite when it comes to intentions, but whether you like it or not, the reins are in their hands. Yeah. So you have to pitch each idea according to the interest of the person you're pitching it to.
Yeah.
And again, what I've seen is this initial hostility, that it's too idealistic, because I'm saying that everyone should have an equal vote. But when I explain the thorough thought, research, and projections that have gone into this book, they generally become far more open to the idea.
Okay. And how do you think they will be going on with this plan? How will they explain it to their ground workers and stuff? What's the process? When do you see this happening? In our lifetimes, 10, 20 years?
Definitely in our lifetimes, sooner
Okay.
rather than later. It might not happen in one go. They might, have some test balloons. In a way, I think that Telangana-Andhra divide was already a test balloon of sorts. And they probably go slow over it, try to figure out how to go about it. And all of it, see, from what I'm aware of, many pan-national organizations, including the RSS, are anyways not organized on state lines. Right? And they have a far greater ground connect than any of the political parties today. Whether they're taking it up this way or whether they're thinking about it is purely their discretion, and my guess would be as good as yours. But I can clearly see that there may be a sort of uptake for this, particularly as economics becomes more and more important for everyone. 30 years ago, explaining that the fiscal deficit is important to a person would have been impossible.
Yeah.
Today, that's not the case.
And especially with West Bengal, your idea will work out great for Mallabhum, because Mallabhum will probably have a government that wants to do great things in terms of industry, and Gaur will probably still lag behind and will have other priorities. And therefore, the people from the Gaur region in your hypothetical India map will not have to go to Bangalore for a job. They will just have to go to Mallabhum,
And
because
when they go
Mallabhum
to
will progress.
and when they go to Mallabhum, the political pressure on the Gaud elite to fix a thing will increase.
Yeah, because the evidence will be right there to see.
Across
Right
the
now, the
board.
evidence, yeah, and it works in so many great ways. Because see, even right now, it can be argued that why aren't they seeing from Karnataka and learning, or seeing Bengaluru and learning right now? Because Bengali news channels don't cover any of that stuff. No one in Bengal who reads or listens to only Bengali newspapers and magazines and newspapers and news media channels and stuff have absolutely no clue the kind of development the rest of the country is seeing.
See, right now
So
also, telling a Bengali on his face that Odisha has greater per capita GDP than you is like a slap. Now when Mallabhum, where people used to joke about Bankura people that they're all short because they don't get food and all.
yeah,
The ugly things used to be said about them, demeaning things used to be said about them. Ki
yeah,
aadu ke chiku bhabe eishob.
yeah,
Eto kotha hoto. When
yeah,
Mallabhum starts doing better than you,
yeah.
you will have no one else to blame. तब दिल्ली को blame देने से कोई फायदा नहीं.
And because there will be, let's say, one Bengali news channel, or at least multiple Bengali news channels from Mallabhum who are all day covering news in Bengali, and that will be seen by people in Gowda.
Joy Matara.
This idea is again too juicy and too good to be true. I think in India, let's see. But I am all for seemingly non-feasible, non-practical ideas. But I'm all behind you right now.
The idea of a politically united India would have seemed unfeasible to many people in 47.
Yeah. Will introducing a land value tax for the capitals, at least in the beginning, and doing away with all other taxes be a good idea for this map?
You have to fix your land revenue system overall. It's in complete shambles and things are not fine the way you're taxing land overall. Whether you want to tax capitalists for the land as such, or whether each state will have to decide, because let's say there's a state where suddenly automation becomes very high, they might have to think about taxing robots instead of land. It depends on the economy of the state what they want to incentivize.
Yeah. Did you approach top BJP leaders? Who was the most interested?
I can't speak on that in public.
Okay. Yeah, this we just discussed. I would rather live in the wilderness of Purulia than... Wait, where did the other interesting point go? Yeah. Why just Mallabhum and Gaur? Why not Gobhum, Mohishadal, etc. as well?
Viability goes down after a point.
Right.
2 crore is generally the ideal size.
Yeah. Should Kishanganj be included in North Bengal state? The north doesn't have land to grow.
I think Kishanganj already is in Council. I'm not sure. I have to check.
Okay. Okay then. Thanks a lot, Deekhit. We will have you back, I think, next weekend itself, if we can, to do a Bengali podcast and discuss all this in Bengali, because you're fluent in Bengali, luckily. Looking forward to having you back.
Chalo, bhalo adda holo. Thank you so much for having me in the first place.
Thanks a lot for writing this book and educating us on this topic. Because up until this day, up until talking to you, I was not interested in the delimitation discussion because I knew nothing of it and it didn't really fancy my tickle. Now I am very much interested in it and I'm absolutely behind the book. I will ask anyone I can to buy this and read it. Okay, we have another question. Would you continue GST in this map? Would competition be better if we let states decide indirect taxes?
I have argued in general for a fiscal devolution to the states to decide their taxes. But however, certain things, for certain critical items like, aviation, turbine fuel or something, we may retain GST. However, this system we have right now where, the center also has a divisible pool, it's collecting taxes and then devolving it to the states. It's not working properly because there's too much scope for discretion to one state or the other. It's a manifestation of political clientelism at the central level. So I would definitely want states to be more empowered when it comes to their own finances.
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot, Deekhit. Okay. And now we have this comment twice, so I'll just take it.
Yeah.
Hindu Vichardhara Didi is saying, please tell him he's very good looking. And she mentioned earlier as well that you are very hot. So just letting you know, you have many career options if the breaking up of states doesn't work out for you. and law.
No, thank you so much.
Is he BBK? He is technically Brahmin, but not in the BBK category as we know it, because he is not a commie trying to destroy the state.
My parents are India.
Oh, I see. So thank you, Deekhit. See you soon. Yeah, go ahead.
My mother is not Bengali.
I see. What ethnicity is she?
She's North Indian. She's from here only. And I mean, practically, look, Bharatvarsha is my house. I belong to Bharatvarsha. Bengal exists for Bharatvarsha, Jammu exists for Bharatvarsha, Delhi exists for Bharatvarsha,
Yes.
I exist for Bharatvarsha. I will do my best for Bharatvarsha.
Yes. Thank you, Deekhit. Thank you. Good night, Deekhit, and thank you all for joining and asking so many interesting questions. Good night, guys. Good night, Deekhit.
Good night.